Good day everyone. We are the Group 1 and we'll be presenting Modules 1, 2, 3, and 4 from the Philosophical Analysis book, Advanced Techniques for Critical Thinking, written by Andresito E. Acuña in the University of the Philippines, Department of Philosophy, Diliman, Quezon City. So the Unit 1 is all about the analysis of concepts. This unit will provide you with the basic concepts and principles for critical thinking. For the first 4 modules, we'll have the words and concepts, intension and extensions of concepts, using the same language, and lastly, the classification of concept. So for the first module, it talks about words and concepts. So this module will provide and guide us on becoming a critical thinker. It will introduce us to a very basic but very important distinction in philosophy of language, namely the distinction between a word and a concept. Why these two? Because these are the basic units of analysis in critical thinking. If they are not made clear at the onset, many complex concepts in the philosophy of language and informal logic cannot be understood. So for our objectives, after completing this module, we should be able to distinguish between a word and a concept, explain how concepts are formed, and distinguish between simple and complex terms. So, philosophers of language agree that a word is the simplest unit of communication in a natural language. What is a word? According to Google, it is a single, distinct, meaningful element of speech or writing, used with others or sometimes alone to form a sentence, and typically shown with a space on either side when written or printed. So, it is indispensable, meaning absolute necessary, means of communication. Without words, concepts cannot be formed. Without concepts, various types of knowledge claims cannot be asserted. Without knowledge claims, arguments cannot be composed. So we heard a word, concept. So what is a concept? A concept is not the same as a word. It cannot be made up of letters, otherwise you would be identifying the word with the concept it represents. Concept is something conceived in the mind. It is an idea, impression, notion, and thought. For example, if you are decorating your bedroom, you might want to start with a concept such as flower garden or outer space. It's a general idea about a thing or group of things derived from specific instances or occurrences. So the ability to form concepts is an indispensable and natural part of us, a part of being human. Without this ability, knowledge and human life will be impossible. So how are concepts formed? According to Locke, general terms were invented because it is impossible for every particular to have a proper name. Locke invented a word to refer to this process. He called it abstraction. As we notice a characteristic common to a group of particulars, a general idea is formed. So let's talk about simple and complex terms. When a word or a group of words is used to express a concept, philosophers would refer to the word as a term. So terms are the verbal means of expressing what we know through concepts. While the concepts that we have are not made up of letters, the terms that we utilize to express our concepts are made up of letters. A term is a word or expression used with a particular meaning. For example, we have a concept which is an insistent, recurring beat pattern that provides the background and counterpoint for rapid, slang, and often boastful rhyming pattern intoned by a vocalist. So this concept would refer to the term rap because it describes a particular style of music. So another example would be the term sweetie, which is a term of endearment, at least to most people. You already know the terms may be a word or a group of words. Dog, cat, bat, bird are a few examples of simple terms. Each of these terms is made up of a single word. On the other hand, complex terms are made up of several words. Some famous examples in philosophy are the present King of France, the author of Waverley and the Morning Star. These are examples of complex terms that represent a single concept, meaning they have a single idea, but in complex, you present two terms. So concepts are native to our intellect. They are our means for acquiring knowledge. These are the building blocks of our knowledge. Yet, they can hardly be imagined to exist, or a better term is subsist, except in our minds. Thus, without the ability to form concepts, human knowledge will not be possible. This is how important words and concepts are. That is why they are the basic units of philosophical analysis and critical thinking. So to sum it all up, this module gave you the distinction between a word and a concept. This is the basic unit of philosophical analysis. Now we know that concepts are made up of ideas and that they are formed through the process of abstraction. You also know that simple as well as complex terms can be used to express a concept. More importantly, we have learned that concepts are the building blocks of knowledge. So let's move on to the next module, which is the extension and intension of concepts. For our module, this will focus on the technique of a critical thinker in analyzing a concept in terms of intention and extension. The distinction between intention and extension has far-reaching implications for our study of more complicated skills in critical thinking. You will use the distinction in classifying concepts, in applying the method of analytic definition, and in distinguishing types of knowledge claims found in Unit 2. So for the objectives, this module will help you enlarge your understanding of what concepts really are. And after completing the module, we should be able to analyze concepts in terms of its extension and intentions, distinguish intention in terms of either essential property or family resemblance, and discuss the significance of Wittgenstein's example of the concept games. So let's talk about the extension and intention. There's a consensus among philosophers of a language that every term expressing a concept is analyzable from two aspects. First, you may identify of the kind of things that are members of the domain of the concept. These are called extension of the concept. The extension of a concept or expression is the set of things it extends to or applies to. If it is the sort of concept or expression that a single object by itself can satisfy. And second, you may specify the trait or set of traits, characteristics, or even function shared by the members. It indicates the internal content of a term or concept that constitutes its formal definition. These are called the intension of the concept. For instance, the intention of ship as a substantive is vehicle for conveyance on water, whereas its extension embraces such things as cargo ships, passenger ships, battleships, and sailing ships. So, in analyzing the intention of the concept, we must try to state the trait or set of traits, characteristics, or the function that differentiates them. To analyze the intention of the concept, we must pay attention to the single trait or set of traits and characteristics those members of the extension must share. So let's move on to the essential property. So notice that when the intention of a concept becomes very precise and clearly defined, it becomes an essential property. This means that the possession of a single trait is the necessary and sufficient condition to qualify one to be a member of the extension of the concept. A familiar example is the concept mammal. The requirement for membership is the possession of a single physical trait, mammary glands. Without mammary glands, an animal cannot be a mammal. So sometimes it is amusing that whales, platypuses, and elephants are mammals. Aside from the mammary gland that they have in common, it seems that they share no other observable characteristics. So the essentialist in philosophy believes that for a concept to be meaningful, the intention of the concept should be limited to an essential property only. Essentialism states that if there is no essential property held in common by all the members, the concept cannot be meaningful. So we have lastly the games and family resemblance. In this book, Philosophical Investigations, Wittgenstein challenged the essentialist view that for a general term to be meaningful, there must be an essential property held in common by the members. He cites his famous examples of games. Here, Wittgenstein enjoins us to consider numerous games like board games, card games, ball games, Olympic games, and so on. And then he asked, what single trait or characteristic is common to all these games? Wittgenstein explores some possibilities. He ponders, is there always winning and losing or competition among players? Is there always amusement or enjoyment among players? Don't say there must be something common or they would not be called games. Wittgenstein could not find a single essence to characterize all games. What he discovered is a multifarious relationship, and he could not think of a better term to call this complicated network than family resemblance. In short, the intention of the concept game forms a family of traits, characteristics, and functions. In sum, concepts are analyzed in terms of its extension and intention. The extension of any concepts consists of the members. In contrast, the intention of the concepts consists of either an essential traits that all the members must have or a family resemblance of traits and characteristics that need not be distributed evenly to all the members. So the technique of analyzing concepts in terms of intention and extension will prove very useful when we develop our skill of classifying concepts and when we develop the more sophisticated skill of defining concepts.
Module 3 tackles using the same language. The module elaborates Ludwig Wittgenstein's theory of meaning in terms of the use of a word. This module has four objectives. First is to describe how a word acquires meaning. Second is to distinguish ambiguous and vague concepts. Third is to avoid useless verbal controversies. And lastly, to apply a cardinal rule in critical thinking. First, let us tackle about how a word acquires meaning. Philosophers agree that a word acquires significance based on its usage by members of a shared community. According to Wittgenstein, there are many meaningful ways in which words can be employed. Examples of these are words can serve as the names for persons. It can also be used to ask questions, and it can even be used to express a command. Wittgenstein used the term language game to emphasize the dynamic and interactive nature of language. Moreover, relating the term language game to an actual game can help you better understand its concepts. By drawing these parallels between language games and actual games, one can better get the idea that the meaning of a word is not fixed, but a dynamic and context-dependent activity with its own rules and conventions in different social and practical contexts. To clarify this, one example of this is the word bat, which has two different meanings in two different language games. One meaning could refer to a rodent, and other could refer to an instrument used in a game called baseball. Therefore, to summarize it, to understand the meaning of a word is to understand how it is used in a given language game. Let us now move forward in distinguishing ambiguous and vague concepts. Wittgenstein's philosophy acknowledges that ambiguity and vagueness are inherent features of language. While both ambiguous and vague concepts introduce challenges to our understanding of language and meaning, in Wittgenstein's philosophy, they differ in their nature and how they manifest. Ambiguity arises from multiple meanings within specific contexts, kagaya na lamang ng salitang loob at hiya, while vagueness is characterized by the lack of clear boundaries and the context-dependent nature of certain concepts kagaya ng mga salitang marami at kaunti. Both phenomena emphasize Wittgenstein's view that the meaning is not determined by fixed definitions but is shaped by the way language is used in real-life situations. Further, let us move to the third objective of this module. If this theory states that the word meaning can be acquired based on language games, it is therefore important to acknowledge that the word is used uniquely in both parties to avoid the term useless controversies. Oh, you might be wondering, what is the meaning of the term useless controversies? Wittgenstein's concept of useless controversies reflects his belief that many traditional philosophical debates are based on misunderstanding and misuse of language. He encountered philosophers to focus on clarifying language and examining how it is used in real-life contexts to dissolve these debates and redirect philosophical inquiry toward more meaningful and practical questions. Now we can move on to the fourth and last objective of this module. There is a term called cardinal rule in critical thinking, which states that one should never be part in any discussion or verbal dispute in any subject matter unless you are sure that you are both using the same word in the same way. When carrying a discussion or debate, one should always ask, what do you mean by that? In what sense are you using the word? This is because argument should always be clear and precise. Ambiguity and vagueness can weaken an argument. Thus, cardinal rule emphasizes the importance of articulating your position and reasoning in a way that is easy for others to understand. To summarize this module, Wittgenstein's theory of meaning revolves around the idea that the meaning of a word is tied to its use in various practical contexts or language games. Meaning isn't static. It emerges through the dynamic interactions of language users in specific situations. Words derive their significance from their role in these games, making meaning a product of context usage and shared understandings rather than fixed, abstract definitions. Let us now move forward to Module 4, which is the classification of concept. This module have three objectives. Number 1 is to distinguish the 7 main categories of concept. Number 2 is to apply the technique for classifying concepts. And lastly, to apply the intra- and intersubjectivity tests. In philosophy, a concept is a fundamental and important idea that people have thought and argued about for a long time. I'd like to think that a concept is a mental tool that helps us understand and sort things in the world. It's like a building block for our thinking, talking, and understanding of the world around us. There are 7 easily accessible concept categories, but it's crucial to keep in mind that the new categories could emerge with time, and some existing ones might also vanish. The first one is the empirical concept, the easiest one to understand. In philosophy, an empirical concept refers to a concept or idea that is derived from or based from a sensory experience and observations of the physical world. Ang pinaka-common na example dito ay ang mga bato, sticks, tables, and chairs. The second concept is called theoretical concept, which refers to a concept or idea that is abstract and typically not directly tied to sensory experience. We all know that abstract means existing as an idea, feeling, or quality, not as a material object. Thus, these concepts are often developed through reasoning, experiments, and intellectual reflection rather than direct observation of the physical world. One of the most common examples of a theoretical concept in philosophy is the concept of scientific theory. In philosophy of science, the concept of scientific theory is theoretical because it involves abstract ideas and principles that underlie the scientific endeavor. Let us now move forward to the third concept, which is called dispositional concept, which is a way of talking about how something is likely to behave or react in certain situations based on its inherent properties or tendencies. It describes the potential behaviors of things even when those behaviors aren't currently happening. Examples of these are elastic, magnetic, and temperature. Elasticity is a dispositional concept because it describes the inherent tendency of certain materials to exhibit this behavior when subjected to a force. Kahit na ang isang material na alam natin ay nababanat ay hindi kasalukuyang nakabanat or nakadeform, alam natin na ito ay may disposition o potential na gawin ito sa ilalim ng tamang kondisyon, which is to exert force. Ikalawang halimbawa naman ay ang magnetism. It is the property of certain materials to attract or repel other materials based on their magnetic fields. Kahit na ang isang magnet ay hindi active na nagre-repel o nag-a-attract ng mga bagay, ito ay nagtataglay ng disposisyon na magawa ito kapag nakikipag-ugnayan sa iba pang mga magnetic na materyales. At ikahuling halimbawa, ang temperatura. It is a dispositional concept because it describes the inherent property of matter to have a specific thermal state or kinetic energy level. Kahit na ang isang bagay ay hindi aktibong nakakuha o nawawalan ng init, nagtataglay pa rin ito ng temperatura batay sa mga likas na katangian ng thermal nito. The fourth one is called analytical concepts, which are also abstract concepts that cannot be found in the real world. They are conceptual entities such as creation of our minds. Numbers are often considered analytic concepts in philosophy because they exemplify truths that are determined by the meanings of the terms and the rules governing their use in the mathematical system. The fifth one is called evaluative concept, which covers a whole range of concepts like moral, aesthetic, and religious. Evaluative concepts play a crucial role in ethical theories and moral philosophy as they are used to examine and discuss what is considered morally right or wrong, good or bad, and virtuous or vicious. Concepts like mabuti at masama falls under moral category, while impyerno at langit falls under religious category. Kagandahan at kapangitan naman falls under aesthetic category. As for the sixth concept, it is called fictitious concept, which are concepts that has been clearly portrayed but are purely imaginary. Multo, tikbalang, nuno sa puno are good examples of these concepts. These concepts are pretending to be empirical because some Filipinos actually do believe that such things exist. And the last concept is the metaphysical concept, which refers to an idea or notion that pertains to a branch of philosophy known as metaphysics. Metaphysics is a fundamental subfield of philosophy that deals with questions about the nature of reality, existence, and the fundamental principles that underlie the universe. Substance is a central topic in metaphysical discussions and pertains to the nature of underlying, unchanging reality or entities that exist. Now, we can move forward to the second and third objective of this module, which is to apply the technique for classifying concepts and apply the intra- and intersubjectivity tests. It is very difficult to determine the status of a concept, be it empirical, fictitious, or abstract. That is why there is a method that is called intra- and intersubjectivity tests. Basically, to illustrate these two tests, an example is an angel. Kapag yung angel na yun is visible and tangible only to me, and if I touch it and it emits sounds only I can hear, and basically ako lang din yung nakakaamoy at nakakatikim dito, kapag ako lang mag-isa yung nakaka-identify or re-identify sa angel na yun in any occasions I want to, then the angel passed the intersubjectivity test. Because from the word itself, intra, subjective, this refers to something that is related to an individual personal experience. However, what if gusto rin ng ibang tao hawakan at makita yung angel pero hindi nila magawa? Kahit na tinuruan ko na sila. That means the angel failed the intersubjectivity test. Dito na pumapasok yung tanong na, is the angel empirical? We have to remember that the concept to be empirical must pass both intra- and intersubjectivity tests. Kaso, hindi naman pumasa yung angels sa intersubjectivity test. So, that is why we can conclude that the concept of an angel is purely fictitious. Moreover, ginagamit din yung test na to para sa trans-empirical entities like nuno, tikbalang, or aswang. Basically, maraming tao o maraming Filipino na nagkiklaim na nakakita na sila nito. Pero ang crucial na tanong ay, kahit sino bang taong gustong mag-observe dito anytime, maoobserbahan at makikita nila to? If ang sagot ay oo, then these entities are empirical. Pero kung sagot ay no, then these entities are purely fictitious. Therefore, by considering the intersubjectivity and intersubjectivity of concepts, philosophers can better analyze and categorize various philosophical ideas and theories. This distinction helps illuminate the diverse ways in which concepts are constructed, communicated, and understood, enhancing our understanding of both individual and collective aspects of human cognition and knowledge.